Oh no, it's all
probably not gonna
stuff. It's
help.
completely
Oh, we're live.
beyond my. We are live, yeah, but yeah, it's completely beyond my knowledge of geek. But it's
All right.
every now and again you kind of sort of just see a scan and it's like 15 costumes on this wall. She's got a huge. It's the room she must be working in must be huge because she's got her stuff on display. Yeah, there's like a wall of swords and spears and things like that.
Oh,
I'll try and
Kamui.
remember.
Kamui cosplay.
I was thinking it must be.
Might be.
She's
I
only
can't remember.
Glasses,
prolific cosplayer
brown
glasses.
hair, wall of
Yeah.
cosplay. That's
gotta be,
Kamui
isn't it?
cosplay. Anyway, though. Hey, everyone.
Yeah, welcome. It could be slightly different. This is our episode 20. That's some
is.
people. There are some people in the podcast community who reckon if you can get to 20, you're probably going to keep going,
Oh, does that mean
which
we're
I
gonna have
think
to
is a good
carry on?
thing.
That's really awesome,
Yeah.
actually.
Well, considering
I
we've
don't know
got
enough
guests,
about podcasts, I think.
we've
to
got
have
guests
done
booked
that.
up for the next 10 or 12 episodes. So yeah, we probably should carry on after today.
Yeah,
Yeah, I reckon
already
so.
got
a good idea.
Unless we absolutely curse you with all of the terrible things we have to say today. And
Well,
and,
I think
and
it is-
I
nobody
think
goes-
we'll be coming back. Because I don't think we're going to get through.
I don't think there's
A,
gonna
I don't
be
think we're going to get
so
through
much-
everything.
Yeah,
And B,
agreed.
I don't think we're going to change the world with one episode.
Nah, probably not. Probably not. I mean, that's the dream, right? Change the
Yeah.
world with a single podcast.
I mean, hopefully by tomorrow, yeah, or at the end of the week, for the people who listen on audio, the world's going to be a very different place.
So
That
Thursday
is the
morning,
kind
we'll
of
wake
dream.
up, everything will be perfect.
Yes. That's the plan.
Cross my
We
fingers.
can but hope. We can but hope.
I think if nothing
Absolutely.
else, we're going to need some aftercare later, I think.
Probably. I feel like we've all been on the show once before.
Yeah.
So we've technically
Well, apart
all...
from Jamie and I have been on a bit more often.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope it would be an odd show if y'all didn't show up. That would that'd be awkward. In fact,
Some
would-
have said it would be an improvement.
why would anyone show up and then not want you two to be here? That would be an odd intention. A very odd intention indeed. I do feel like though I realize I have a thing now where I now feel like I need to introduce myself all the time, even if I've been somewhere before. Like even if I've been on here before, I still like, oh no, I need to introduce myself
I think
because the
just in
thing is
general,
just
like,
started.
Yeah.
you know, just in general, it's like, hi, I'm Allie. I've been on the Makers Waffle podcast. Yeah, just to like people, if you
Nothing
go
else
like,
anyone
the
needs to
shop
know.
Or, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well, now I can't go first. Jeez, gosh.
Well, I suppose
Lindsay,
because what
Lindsay,
we-
introduce yourself, please.
I'm busy reading the comments. Sorry, I just thought it was funny. Someone said the only curse is that it'll be hard to top this episode, and then NMB Wordwork said, "I thought this was the auditions to replace them." So we're after your jobs, I guess.
By the way,
Sorry,
I do want to check both with my fellow hosts and the audience if my audio levels are okay, because I think they were a little low and I tried to tweak them, but now they might be too high. Am I exceptionally loud or am I appropriately loud?
No, I think you're okay.
I realised I haven't even done an audio test because I was just sat eating my tea.
I
You
think-
sound
I think
good.
Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. You're loud and clear. Well, you're clear and you're not necessarily loud. You're normal volume.
I think the audio levels are going to be the least of our worries this evening.
Maybe, perhaps.
Who knows?
I suppose,
we'll see.
Andy, do you want to do the honours in
Yeah.
explaining?
Niall is saying that
Come on.
everything's all loud and clear. It's on Neil, sorry. Niall, it's funny. Scottish names. It's like, what? Yeah, spellings. I don't know. Oh, and crikey, Christmas just turned up. Now we're in trouble. Right, yeah, let's actually focus and start acting professional and kind of get the sort of podcast on the road.
Well, 20 episodes in, we might as well start now.
Yes, better late than
Yeah,
never,
this
right?
this is episode 20, and we've kind of came to a sort of a plan sometime after episode 10 that every 10th episode we would get a group of people in rather than a sort of single individual or at some point maybe couples, I don't know, but we'd get a group in and have a topic to talk about, because Makers Waffle, normally we don't really have a topic. We waffle.
You waffle.
And that's the nature of the beast, and that's how kind of we want to play it. But we do want to occasionally kind of actually have some proper discussions about a topic. And we do have some topics in mind for the future, and we've got ideas for topics. And this evening, first group chat, and we welcome back. We've got Lindsay from Lindsay Creative, and Ruth Amos from Kids Invent Stuff, and of course Allie from Geeky Faye Art, who have all been previous guests, and that will probably be the sort of plan with these group chats, to have sort of previous guests back on. Because we like talking to them. People, I guess, are turned into our friends. Well, when they turn into our friends, they're our friends.
It's been our sort of modus operandi from day one, isn't it? Is to just make
Yeah.
friends and have a natter with them under the guise of doing a podcast.
Don't
that other
reveal
people
the
might enjoy.
secret. This is all,
Basically,
all just
it's
a big scam to just hang out with your friends and
yeah,
and
to
chat
get people to talk
and,
to
have
us.
a natter.
Yeah, people don't talk to us normally. That's half the battle. But we've got a topic today, and it's a meaty topic. And basically, the premise that Jamie and I put to our three guests several months ago, actually, was as two white. Not that that's actually important for the discussion this evening, but will probably be a discussion in the future. Middle-aged, bearded bloke types. How
Beard's
can
optional.
we? The beard is optional. Yeah, beard is not essential, but we just happen.
It's a nice touch, though.
Yeah, there's a lot of beards in the maker community, and that's kind of part of it, but not essential.
A lot of bearded people in the maker community. I'm going to just because Allie's picked
You
up on
knew exactly
the
what I
phrasing.
was thinking and laughing at.
Yeah,
I might have to.
and this is kind of it. So the basic idea is, how can these two bearded middle-aged blokes, who both happen to have daughters, we both have daughters, so there's kind of a bit of a vested interest. How can we become better allies to women, female, non-binary makers, particularly? But it's the makers bit is not, I think, actually that important. It's just that we are, and the guise of this, it's Makers Waffle. We're in the maker community. This is a maker community podcast. So that's kind of not essential, but it's there. But the people we tend to hang around with the people we tend to interact with most, particularly in our spare time. Obviously, can't talk about necessarily work, but in our spare time, the time that we want to invest in people, because we want to, not because we're paid to, is mostly with people that are in the maker community. And we want to be better allies to the women, to the females, to the non-binaries, to the trans, to all those other sectors that, frankly, particularly based on some of the things that, just today, seeing some of the threads on Twitter, don't get the support and the recognition and the empathy,
Equality and the equity.
the equality, the equity that, frankly, in the 21st century should be happening. So how can what we want to do is, basically, for the most part, I think Jamie and I are probably going to not talk that much today, but we want to be made, perhaps. I think we hopefully, because we've asked for this meeting, this conversation. I think
You
we
did. You
probably
initiated this. We didn't.
Yeah.
We didn't hold you.
We-
We didn't hold you at gunpoint.
This is coming from us. We want to know. I think we know some of the problems. You can see it every day on Twitter and the like. But we want to know some of the problems. We want to know, but most importantly, what can we do? What can other people do?
I think to
help.
to build on that, Andy, that we see problems in general as opportunities to fix stuff, and we know from anyone who we are friends with who is not a cis male type.
The top of the pyramid.
Yeah,
So to
the common denominator, as it were, in almost every sphere of online interaction with anyone, and interactions in general. We see problems with interactions in general, and as bloke types, we
I
want
like
to be able
that.
to
I think that should be a technical term.
yeah, but the onus, we're seeing problems with our
that.
peers,
As we-
and
Yeah, we should point out, just interrupt Jimmy quickly, for the benefit of audio listeners, particularly later in the week, but also people tonight. Lindsay is sitting in the middle of an air show at the moment.
yes, there might be some interruptions.
It's a really wild sound.
Yeah,
Like,
the Thunderbirds are flying over right now, I think. So
yeah, just FYI, especially
FAB.
I guess it doesn't matter seeing versus hearing. It's not like we can see it. We can only hear it. But yeah, lacking in any context, it's kind of like, oh, what was that?
It's a mechanical noise, not some sort of bodily function sort of noise.
Yeah, it is.
right. I want to clarify that was not me.
That was a plane. That was a jet. That was a fighter jet. It's all good. So yes, now everyone knows. And then when you hear that sound, I feel like we should have like a little counter up in the corner.
There we go.
The plane counter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm the big thing for me driving this forward as well is the fact that the onus in a lot of cases.
Sorry.
In a lot of cases, the perception is that we should be told. Tell us when we're doing something wrong. And I don't think that's right. I think we should be able to. I think Andy and I should be able to call out our peers and say that's wrong.
At the same time, you do have to start somewhere. Like you do have to start somewhere, which is why
pressure shouldn't always just be on. Not us.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But it is. But I do think it's okay to have that sort of like, yes, this is an onboarding. This is an onboarding situation.
Certainly we want to be
so that you may go out and conquer.
Yeah. I mean, I think I speak for sort of Jamie and I. I think, hopefully, try and do things right anyway. But I think I'm aware that sometimes I make mistakes. And I try not to. And if I realise I've made a mistake, I will try and apologise and try and work out that mistake and not do it again.
And move forward.
But sometimes not always aware that things I'm doing or saying or interacting are mistakes.
The learning is a big part of it.
So kind of, learning.
You don't know the privilege you have because you have it.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest things. There's a lot of
That's
times.
kind of how it works, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's things like, we're coming in the UK. We're coming back off the City Everard case in the past few weeks, which has caused obviously a lot of difficulties. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of issues with that, and I had a conversation with my wife and about at the time of when that incident sort of occurred, and I kind of knew, but I didn't really. It's not a conversation we'd ever really had about how, and it's stuff I'd seen in papers, and I'd seen people talking about it. I'd seen in magazines where the whole sort of thing about kind of when women go out, they're likely to keep their keys in their hand. They're likely to have their phone with somebody talking to while they're walking down the street at night. They're checking constantly who's behind them, which a lot of men don't do. And
I always think a really good kind of example of the difference is and again, like I think it's worth noting that we're gonna be flip-flopping around in terms of like who exactly we're talking about at any given time. And I realized that this would all be so much simpler if we were just looking at, men and women, and that's it.
Yep.
And we kept it nice and simple in that regard. But obviously the world isn't simple. And so it's not as straightforward. So like I always try to make an effort to be clear as possible when I am talking about a particular thing to include the right people, I suppose. So like in this particular instance, I do feel like this is specifically a sort of a cisgender heterosexual for those of you who don't know what cishet means. And I might do this a lot actually, just because I don't necessarily know who's in the audience and who's listening and how many terms people know. Cisgender means you are the same gender that you were basically assigned at birth. That's about what that means. You haven't changed your gender, as opposed to transgender, which is changing your gender from the one that was assigned to you at birth. I'm transgender because I am not the same gender that I was when I was a baby, or at least the one that was given to me when I was a baby. So therefore, there you go. So yeah, the walking home at night thing is when you have a couple of cishet guys, you don't tend to tell each other, hey, text me when you get home so I know you got home safe.
Yeah.
Because it's not really so much of a concern. And I guess the reason why I'm using this distinction is because I do know a lot of homosexual men, a lot of effeminate men actually do still have this concern. So it is not necessarily an exclusive feminine or like not exclusively a woman problem. It's not exclusively a problem with people who are coded as women, but a not the most, like, again, not at the top of the pyramid. But again, the point is that y'all don't necessarily look at each other and go, hey, get home safe. Let me know you got home safe. Because a lot of women and people in which this is a real issue, especially in like cities. And if you walk home, if there's some sort of element of walking home, I don't think it's so much of an issue if you drive. Like if you're driving from point A to point B, it's a little bit less of an issue. But if there's walking, there's an opportunity for violence potentially. And the whole like the walking with the keys in your hand or having mace or something in your handbag is like, that's not an exaggeration. That's very much a reality for a lot of people. And you don't necessarily, like Ruth was saying, you don't necessarily think of that if you've never experienced it. Because why would you? Why would you sit there and concoct scenarios in your head of potential bad things that could happen to you? Like, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But also, if other people are talking about it and you're just not listening, like, then that's a different issue. Like, people are talking about this stuff. And a lot of people are still just kind of like, la, 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 I'm not listening.
And I think it's also like, it just doesn't become a reality until someone experiences it.
And this is true, I think, for a lot of times for women as well. Like, if they haven't actually experienced that sort of like a insert negative gendered violence thing here, they might not necessarily think of it as a thing that could affect them until it does. And that sucks. That sucks.
I suppose if I can just interject a moment just to do a sort of coverall content note here, is that we are going to be discussing very, very charged topics, including things like sexual violence and challenging prejudices and abuse,
aggression,
things
that could be triggering to people. So people listening, if these things might be something that you might find difficult to listen to,
we will backtrack
Proceed
and
with
put
caution.
we will backtrack and put a thing at the start for the audio version as well. But and there will probably be swears and emotion and everything.
There might be many swears. There might be swears.
I think it's a good time for me and Andy to shut our mouths a little. Do you folks want to sort of give a brief introduction before we dive, even deeper, or?
Nope. No, I don't know. It's up to y'all. It's up to y'all.
People can go back to the episodes and they can listen to the episodes. This is why we're having previous guests on, because then people want to know more about the guests. They can go back and listen.
Apologies, I just realized that I forgot to turn off my my electronic slider and it's beeping at me now. And I'm just like, I don't want to get up. It's beeping at me now.
Go on, Allie, you can do it.
Fine, hold on. I'll be right back. Hold on.
I suppose it's worth us also acknowledging the fact that we're not a group of professionals here. We haven't got backgrounds in any of this stuff, but we have 3 wonderful guests with us who have experience, unfortunately, in areas that Andy and I don't. And yeah, we're not as diverse a group in this chat as we would like, but we are more diverse than Andy and I, which is what we wanted to at least have. And there will be more discussions in future, hopefully with more diversity, more experience, to help educate not only Andy and I, but hopefully anyone else listening. I think something that I'd like to at least make sure that comes across is that it isn't just for Andy and I. It is very much a people topic. I think everyone's probably going to have something to learn out of all of this, or at least hope.
And just for the benefit as well for people listening, there's been some preparation in the background before this episode, which is unusual for our episodes. We generally don't do too much preparation, but there has been some preparation, and there's been conversations happening in the background. And the number one principle that we laid out when we started this conversation and we invited guests on was that the guests need to feel safe, and they know what they want to talk about, and we're not going to kind of push for anything. If they don't feel comfortable about chatting about something, that's absolutely fine.
And we'll say as much.
Yeah,
we very much appreciate that, patience and understanding that you've shown us over the last couple of months in discussing this, and in tonight in being here. It's
my pleasure.
Hugely appreciated.
My pleasure. I also don't know. I obviously I missed a couple minutes there. I had to take out the battery. It literally doesn't have an on-off switch. You just have to pull the battery from it. I feel the need to just kind of say, for the sake of having no doubt, we obviously don't speak for everyone. We speak for ourselves. We speak for our experiences. We speak for the experiences of those around us, but we don't speak for everyone. We obviously are not equipped. We don't have to deal with, obviously a whole slew of other areas of oppression here. And yeah, so we are not experts. We are not claiming to speak for anyone else necessarily. We are just kind of a couple of people who have experiences to have enough experience that we can speak as though we know a bit of what we're talking about. Would you say that's an accurate assessment, y'all? Cool.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I always feel like that sort of thing is important. So a lot of times you will absolutely there might be a thing that occurs sometimes where white women very much like to speak as though they know the experiences of all women and femmes everywhere, and it's kind of like, no.
We are aware that we also hold some privilege, and the fact that we can come and have this conversation is also a privilege as well.
Safely and without fear. Yeah. So I like to say that. I like to say that for the benefit of the doubt.
So where do we want to kick off?
I don't know. I do actually like that we have taken some time to write out some stuff, because I actually think that is very helpful, because there is just so many things.
There's so much to it.
There's so much to it. Text about people saying in the questions in the comments saying that people are just learning about some of the experiences that women are facing and things like that. And I think there is a lot of I think one of the things that I try and do is to kind of share when some of these things happen, because I think a lot of the time, if that thing doesn't happen to you, you aren't aware of it. And so particularly in my social media, there have been times where I've shared things or put things out. And there are people who are watching this evening who have come to my defense and have been very good allies. But also as well, it always interests me that people just assume certain things don't happen. So,
or they're one-offs.
Yeah.
Or,
so
like they're rare.
I had a whole
like this is going to happen often.
Yeah, I had a whole conversation with someone on Instagram, about when I go running. So I dressed, I don't know, for Kids Invent stuff, I wore my running gear to be a spy. And I just made a joke on stories of like, am I being a spy or am I going running? And someone was like, oh, why would you want to, like, oh, I'm guessing you're going running sort of thing. And I was like, yeah, well, sometimes it'd be nice to be invisible when you're running. And they were like, why? And I had to point out that probably, well, I actually did a lot of research after the conversation. I trained for a half marathon, and 85% of the runs that I did near a road, 85% of the runs that I did near a road, near other people, I got either shouted at or catcalled or something like that. When I ran away from people, obviously that didn't happen, but it was just interesting that this particular person did not think that those things happened anymore. And I had to point out that that is a regular occurrence. In fact, it is a golden star run when that doesn't happen and you're running by a road. And I think that was just because they had never had that experience. That hadn't happened to them.
Do you do much? And it's funny that I have to ask this because it's about to become abundantly clear how little time I spend outside of London in the UK. Do you do much walking around where you live and where you regularly spend time? Like, do you drive places or do you walk places or some combination therein?
Yeah, a little bit of a mix.
Okay.
Predominantly when I'm like out and about, it is to go running or whatever. Right. And it's one of the things, particularly as we head into winter, I have to think about where I run. I'm very lucky that we have lovely kind of country fields and things, and it's very lovely to run. I'm not allowed to run. I say I'm not allowed. There's kind of rules that are kind of created for my safety as well. That, you know, if I happen to mention to my sister that I had gone out running on my own at night, she'd have been like, you stupid girl, what are you doing? So it's like running with someone, ideally somewhere very well lit. So in the winter, I have to change my complete route. I have to start road running because it's lit all the way around. Even then, there are certain parts of the route I have to think before I set off, which route am I going to go? I have to tell someone, all these things. Whereas a lot of guys I know just chuck on their shoes and run.
Yeah. The reason why I asked is because I don't even need to go running to have that happen. I literally just need to leave the house and go somewhere because obviously I'm in London, so I walk most places. And it is interesting because obviously I lived in Houston before I lived in London, and Houston is not a walking city at all. I tried it once. I almost got hit by many cars. It was bad. I was going to say, this is basically for Lindsay and maybe anyone in the audience who's ever been into Houston. I attempted to walk to the Whole Foods on Kirby from Rice Village. Mm-hmm. And that meant crossing a major freeway. And it was terrifying. It also took me like an hour and a half. Like, it was stupid. It was absolutely insane. But like, I guess the thing is you don't walk much in Houston. You know, they're inside malls, maybe like inside the Galleria Mall, you might walk, but you don't walk
anywhere with air conditioning,
which is everywhere in Houston. Mm-hmm. You know, like I'm pretty certain it is a criminal offense to not have air conditioning in Houston because of how hot it gets in the summer. Like, it would be bad. But yeah, mm-hmm. the whole, when I moved to London, I became abundantly aware very quickly of how I pretty much couldn't leave the house to go anywhere. Caveat, looking a particular way, without being catcalled, without being shouted at, without having comments made, and occasionally being grabbed and physically assaulted. So like, the fact that it's not even just a like, oh, it's a running thing. Like, no, actually it's literally just an existing thing. Though it is interesting because I can say, because of the fact that my presentation does not always look the same, I am able to say that the more feminine I look, the more feminine I dress, usually with more skin showing, but not necessarily, will like the amount of harassment goes up steeply. If I go out looking more masculine or less just less feminine, I tend to become more invisible, which is interesting. But it's basically it's so pervasive that that Ruth basically can't go for a single run, without this happening, or I can't go to the shop. It's every day. It's all the time. It's not an isolated incident, even a little bit. Yeah.
Lindsay, what about you?
Well, as Allie said, that Houston is much a driving city. And so I do walk near here, and I have a route that I take.
Oh, you're lucky.
It's a little... Okay. But it's scary when you post a picture where you're walking and then someone says, you don't know, on Instagram, and it's like, I know where that is.
Yeah, no, it's fucked.
I know where you live. Fuck that.
Yeah.
I don't know this man. I wasn't, and he is probably completely unaware of what that means.
And that is part of the problem.
It was very scary, actually. So now I don't post where I walk anymore.
No.
Even if, it was like a tree and a sidewalk. Like, I'm like, oh, like, it was an oak tree. It was very pretty. I wanted to share it with everybody. And then, something casual like that happens. So I'm a little more emotional about sharing things like that.
It's
but it happens.
Understandable.
And so, so now I just keep those quiet.
Sadly,
it's sad though, isn't it, where you have to think about that. I think a lot about what I'm posting and what's in videos, and in a way that I know others, because I've had the conversations with white cis men and they don't have to do this. And their addresses are on the internet, and people don't, they don't get the same sort of thing. I'm constantly thinking like, oh, I shouldn't post this, or and even pictures of me with my little boy. I happened to post a reel that had a feminist message, and it was shared by a big page that shares a lot of feminist content called The Female Lead. It's amazing. You should follow them on Instagram if you don't already. They shared the reel, and of course I got an influx of people who were solely there to like say things to me. And it's really tough when some things that, I don't know about you, but particularly during the pandemic, social media has created this massive community. I've met Allie, I've met Lindsay, I've met Jamie and Andy, like all sorts of people that I maybe didn't know as well before the pandemic. I feel like I know them through online content, and it's a lovely environment. And then to have someone send you something, or someone post something, or someone comment about your children in a horrific way,
even in a slightly too familiar way.
Oh, it's a scarier way.
Like it is definitely a sliding scale of scary. Like it's not always the all the way scary. Sometimes it's the, is that, did this person mean this or that? Like where you question it, and I guess, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you didn't. It's fine. It's all good.
Like the thing with the commenting on like I know that tree, like the chances of that person not meaning ill are high, but it's the fact that it's not zero, and in fact actually it's much above zero, that makes it absolutely terrifying. And again, the problem that I think is I'm more and more I feel like is one of the bigger problems is the, well, but I didn't think about that.
Oh yeah.
You know, I didn't think about that because I know that I'm well intentioned. So surely, like, surely
yeah.
everyone else should know I'm well intentioned too. And unfortunately, men, this isn't personal. This isn't personal. This is a well established thing that exists, and you happen to be you happen to be there, like that it happens to be you. And the wrong thing to do is to be defensive.
Yeah.
Because it isn't personal. We didn't pick you out of a crowd and go, you look skeevy, you look creepy, I think you're dangerous. No, it's not you, it's everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But there are also certain things that then kind of become even scarier when it feels a lot more closer to home as well. So I've had it where I've blocked people and then a new profile has come that looks very similar, saying the same things, and I'm pretty sure it's that person. And I just think, who goes to that sort of effort? Who spends that time to do
Respect
that? And it's
boundaries.
the way it makes you, the way it then makes you feel is very. And I understand as well. You know, I've had friends say, "Oh, this situation happened," and I'm like, "It's all right. Take a deep breath. It'll be fine." But when it's in your personal space online, also whatever it is, when it's in your little world and that person steps on it digitally or in real life, that becomes very scary. And from an outsider, you can be like, "Oh, they probably didn't mean it," but it's literally like someone knocking on your door.
Yeah.
It's can give you such, like, there are times I've thought I don't need to be on social media.
I'd imagine the volume of them as well. Sorry.
It's so what I also want to say is I feel like, and I think online personas, there is certain amount of people who may follow you feel like they have ownership over you.
It's the whole parasocial relationship thing.
Yes. And I think that because of that, they get to, there's like no boundaries that are like in real life. There would be these, well, I can't even say that for myself. That's another, we'll get to that. But I do feel like there is a certain amount of ownership that is expressed towards people who are not cis men.
Entitlement.
Yeah, there is an entitlement. And
it is absolutely
and
absolutely entitlement.
Ownership to touch our bodies, to make comments, to, you know, over our things even. Anyway.
It's almost a consent issue in a way, because there's that almost that idea that, because we're volunteering to put ourselves online, to be these public entities, that somehow equals consent to everything.
Yes.
Like there's no space between saying yes to one thing and saying yes to another thing. It is, for some people, this incredible leap of, because you've, I mean, to be fair, this is literally the same sort of logic that is the, oh, well, you wore a short skirt.
Exactly.
You know, that leap of logic around consent, that is not okay. I mean, basically, whenever I am having one of those conversations with somebody in which they're open and interested in one, they want to learn, and they don't necessarily have a good education around consent, and I'm being asked, well, how do I know? How do I know if it's okay to do X, Y, Z? I'm always like, You ask.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. You ask. And yes, it can be more complicated. Inherent power structures affect people's ability to give honest answers to stuff. Safe spaces being provided are necessary for honest answers. And if there isn't a safe space, you might not get one. However, as a good place to start, asking is important.
And also just being, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, that was it.
and you said, and I love that you said that the power dynamics there, that the answer may not necessarily be what they really want, is to, now the Andy and Jamie, you ask, like, what are ways you can be a better ally? You ask and listen, like not just listen as in their answer, but you listen to their whole demeanor. Yes. And if you're and to interpret that not with your, maybe try to rid yourself of your biases during that interaction.
The listening is really important, actually.
Yeah. And I mean, there's been times when I've appreciated, like I've been in a power dynamic where I was a student and I was learning, and a teacher came up to me, he's like, do you want to learn this? And I really appreciated that they asked, because I mean, they could have said, they could have just told me, this is what you need to do because obviously you're a woman or you don't know anything, kind of.
But also the student.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't necessarily, well, sorry. This wasn't a student thing. This was this was a equal footing sort of thing, but I was still coming in as a learning situation. It's complicated. It was blacksmithing related, but it was more of like,
power dynamic.
There was still power dynamics there. And yeah. So.
Yeah, power dynamics exist whether you want them to or not. It's a little bit like privilege.
But also as well, there is a power dynamic, but there's also a worry. Like sometimes I know things are said or asked, or for example, on Instagram, I had a guy who was very persistently trying to video call, and I was like, no, this isn't happening. And when I didn't answer, he sent like angry emojis. And then I was instantly like, okay, I have some options here. But if this escalates, sometimes people react differently when they're blocked, or do you know what I mean? And actually that can then create something that isn't necessarily, I've had people come at me just for the sheer fact that I blocked them. Do you know what I mean? And it's that interesting dynamic of actually, is it easy just to be polite? But then also put, you're kind of fueling the fire there, you're not. And so much of these things I have realized, or have had a very stark realization of the differences through Kids Invent Stuff, because the way that, and the things in the comments, I have a lovely set of comments that I've collected of things that have been said about me. And I've been collecting about Sean as well. And I'm very lucky because Sean does quite often, he will deal with a lot of the comments and he will take off some of those ones as well. But I have asked him outright, I said, have you ever had any comments like this about you? And he hasn't ever, in coming up to however many years, 5 years. But pretty much every video, there's a few on me. And that's a very stark contrast of like actually things that seem to be acceptable to write about people that aren't white men on the internet, and the stuff that doing that, there's just none of it. And I would say that both of us have thought about certain things. We both put ourselves in situations that might be seen as, I don't know, like it's not just because I'm walking around asking for it. Does that make sense? Like you're
literally doing the exact same thing.
It's kids content. We're dressed in a way that is seen in the Western world as culturally appropriate and all that sort of thing. Like, oh, we are, we're covered. We're all that sort of thing.
If not even on the conservative side, like y'all
exactly.
dress. I'm very aware because I was very nervous about how I would dress to be in a video because y'all dress like relatively conservatively because it's a kids show. Like I mean, it makes sense.
It's family viewing. We expect.
But you're literally doing
we're like
nothing. You're literally doing nothing.
And there are still comments, and it just, it's just having that very obvious in front of you, this is the same content. This is, do you know what I mean? Both of us, but the only difference is I'm a woman and he's a white man.
You know, it's funny that you brought up the blocking thing, because that is a thing that I have, I think, struggled to express to people. Because that is such an easy response when somebody is harassing you and somebody's giving you a hard time on the internet. You know, when they're being an asshole, people love to trot out the just ignore it, just block them, just, you know, don't engage, don't do anything, and just ignore it. They're just trolls, they're just haters, and that isn't true. That isn't true. People are capable of terrible things on the internet. And the fact is I very, very rarely block people because of that exact thing that you just said, Ruth, the retribution. Is this person going to just move on if I block them and be normal? Or are they going to develop an entire vendetta based on the fact that I blocked them and make some sort of effort to try and ruin my life? That is a terrible thing to have to consider when just trying to protect your space. Because honestly, I would love to just block people. I would, because I don't need that. But I have to weigh up the cost. I have to weigh up the risk and the potential cost of doing that, because a lot of times it's easier to just leave them unblocked so that I can keep an eye on them at the cost of my own mental health.
But this is it. I think a lot of those suggestions come from men within this space, within the YouTube space. And I think
I've made that suggestion at least twice to female friend makers of it's a troll, block them.
Well, I mean, lots of my friends who have these sorts of comments, we will either share them with each other or sometimes we do call them out, because I think a lot of us are fed up of it and understand that the more that people see that these things are said, they might realise that they're ridiculous and unacceptable and you shouldn't say that. But I have friends who have called stuff out, and very big YouTubers have come back to them and said, just block them. I have this policy on my channel and I do this. And you're like, yeah, you're a white man who has a massive following, and you know, literally,
you aren't afraid.
Yeah, you aren't afraid of that in the same way. And I think that there is definitely, I don't know if it's necessarily just about like taking it personally, because I understand that obviously if anyone gets horrific comments, they're horrible, but I think there is that thing of like, how far is this person going to take it? I don't know of many, not that it doesn't happen, but there aren't as many guys who are worried that there's going to be some like psycho woman turn up on their doorstep or another
not
person.
Like it never happens, but the likelihood is pretty small. Pretty small. Excuse me, hi.
I mean, in terms of that dynamic of, you know, like information gathering, tracking down, things like that. I mean, that's been my part of my profession for a time in dealing with the outfall of that. So you know, I've seen that happen firsthand, and it is terrifying to see it happen to someone else. I can't imagine having to live with that fear of it happening to me.
I remember quite
internalize it. No, I was just say you internalize it. That's at least that's what I think a lot of us do. We just kind of internalize it. You were going to say something.
I remember being very young the first time that I wasn't even really on social media. It was actually an email that I got through that was a death threat. I remember taking it to the police station with my mum and them just being like, there isn't really anything we can do. And me just being like, oh, okay. And recently I had an experience, which I did share on Twitter, so many of you might be aware of it, where someone used photos of me to try and scam people. And the community rallied around, and I got a lot of backup.
That was a whole
but that
thing.
was also quite scary because I took advice and I was like, can I do anything? And there was very little that I could actually do. This person thought that I had scammed them or was trying to scam them. They were talking to my clients about, like, you know, people that I'd spoken at events for. They were like, every time I tweeted, they were replying with like horrific things. And it wasn't me. I knew nothing about it. I didn't know who this person was. I didn't know what this person had used. They'd used pictures of my child again, which is another thing that I've been really dubious about, putting pictures of my child on the internet again, because it's like, great. Just all sorts of things that just make you feel like very vulnerable. And people rallied around and were great. And in the end, a lot of them, not the mystery, but that person did realize that they had been scammed and it wasn't me. And they tried to reach out and apologize and stuff. But it was just the viciousness that they came at me, not even double checking. Like, we're in a pandemic. They're in America. How was I supposed to be in the place that I was supposed to? You know, they were literally replying to tweets of me talking at British schools.
He wasn't well either.
Yeah, it was just very.
He wasn't well.
Again, it was just that thing of like, yeah.
There's nothing you can do.
Nothing you can do about it. You're in that situation. I took advice and said, like, legally, is there anything I can do? What can, what are my
I mean,
steps?
who the hell even knows who the person was who stole your photos in the first place? Like, that person is a ghost. Like, I
have a friend who tracked them very well. We know as much as we can about that person, but it isn't going to stop them.
Yeah. There's not much you can do. It's interesting. There was this thing said a little bit ago now, and I can't. I'm realizing, like, it's like, oh no, I think I lost what it was. But I think maybe a way that could be helpful to look at it for people who don't necessarily experience this stuff, as to kind of help you maybe wrap your head around maybe what the fear is like, is a sort of like horseback riding, right? Horseback riding is relatively safe. Like yes, you can get in an accident, you can get hurt, but like for the most part, you're not going to die doing horseback riding, or be like seriously injured. It can happen, but it's not that common. Chances are, if you go and you do horseback riding, you'll be fine. But if you, for some reason, are injured, seriously injured doing horseback riding, and part of the reason why I actually use this example is because growing up, my next door neighbor, who's like also like my babysitter and like somebody I really looked up to, who literally taught horseback riding, she, in a complete freak accident, got bucked off her horse, and the horse slipped and fell on her, and she was quadriplegic as a result. That is a freak accident. That almost never happens, but it happened to her. And if you experience a thing that's kind of like this is a terrible thing, and maybe it's not a super common thing, but it still happened to you, you're going to be afraid of that thing maybe for the rest of your life, because as far as your brain is concerned, the chances of that thing happening just went way up because it happened. So it doesn't, to a certain degree, it almost doesn't matter how common it is in an actual statistical sense. Like, if it's happened to you once, or more than once, then it's kind of like, yeah, I'm afraid of this thing. Yeah, somebody's come after me for blocking them. Yeah, I'm afraid to block people. Like, like these things that we experience, they become a part of the way our minds try to keep us safe, and part of that is in looking in corners and looking over our shoulders and stuff like that, which is, I think, why sometimes the just ignore it comments can feel dismissive. because I think that we already know that we should ignore them. Like that chances are they don't mean anything. Chances are it is just some dumb kid on the internet. But we're still afraid that it won't be a dumb kid on the internet. That it will be somebody else, that it will be somebody with bigger ill intent, or somebody who has got some serious issues and a gun, you know? Like it's the what ifs become a lot more closer to home, I think, and it makes it a lot harder to ignore. It becomes a lot harder to just brush it off. And we still do, I think. I think that we all still do a lot of ignoring and brushing things off. But having someone else tell you, just ignore them. Just don't let, or my favorite, don't let them get to you. Don't let them get to you. As if my feelings about being bothered are not okay. And I should not let it get to me. I should control that instinct. That one definitely bothers me. That's definitely a comment that bothers me.
One of the things that if you want to help you can do is not having it be the person whose post or comment or whatever is having to defend themselves. I think quite often, particularly if you see something sus on a post, call it out.
Yes.
Particularly if you're a white man. Because
yes.
Quite often then that does diffuse a situation, or that person will then, quite a few of you in the comments have helped diffuse a few situations. That person then blocked you because like, oh, hang on a minute, there's lots of people here, that it isn't just that one person.
Strength in numbers.
That does massively help.
Yeah. I definitely agree. I definitely think that on the internet, it's public. You know, it's free. It's a free realm. Dive in.
If anything, it's easier then for us to do that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't got to get in your car. Like, just jump into the thread. I think too that it's nice to not have to feel like you have to do it too. Like to just be like, oh, someone else has got this. I can go get a tea. I can disengage from my own mental health. You know, like it's being handled, so to speak. But there is definitely that safety in numbers. I know one of the things that I'd kind of I had made a bit of a note of as a thing that has kind of been on my mind lately as maybe an area where we could improve things, make things better, is around kind of teaching men what the seeds look like. Because like I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that probably everyone who's still listening, we're an hour in now, everyone who's still listening to this has a desire to learn or to do better, has an open mind, and is probably already maybe even doing some of the work, right? Like I feel like everyone who's generally offended by the stuff we're saying here is probably already tuned out. So the people who are here because they want to be here and they want to learn, they want to do better. And I know that like in my own kind of friends group, same deal. Like we're starting at a certain level here of people who want to do well. And I feel like pretty much every single one of them, if they witness like overt violence or like really like just kind of shocking misogyny or something, that they're probably going to say something. I feel pretty good about that, actually. However, I also feel like most of them would probably not do much before that point, because I feel like it's very easy to train yourself to see overt stuff, like in the same way that it's really easy to see like overt racism. Like overt racism, you're like, oh shit, there it is. Yep, that's racism right there. But you don't necessarily see all the microaggressions that lead up to that. And so like, I feel like one thing that would be good for guys who are kind of in that, yes, I'm committed to doing better. I'm committed to making a difference and trying to improve things. Learning the microaggressions, learning the small things that become the big things, I think is really important, because that tends to be the stuff that you don't necessarily notice.
I know I don't.
That then grows. Because like, that's the thing, is that like people who are like the comments that Hannah was getting on her tweet, like those were gross. She got some really freaking gross comments on that tweet. People don't just start there. They build up to that. But if you don't know what the signs, I guess, look like, if you don't know what the microaggressions look like, you can't stop them. And then they become macroaggressions. Aggressions, just aggression, full-sized aggressions. And I think that part of the way we try to tackle this is exactly what we're kind of doing here, starting with some good guys creating a safe space for people like Ruth and Lindsay and myself to speak and to share, and then other people listening to that and going off and maybe talking to other people that they're close to, other women, other queer folk, other trans folk, and first making the space for them to feel safe to talk. Because if you don't do that bit, they won't talk. You got to make a safe space. And then, getting people, helping people to feel safe to share their own experiences with the microaggressions that they experience. So I think that is a thing that would have positive impact, I suppose. And like, I certainly am happy to start naming, microaggressions that people can look out for.
Please,
in hopes
if you could,
that it will lead to something else.
I mean, yeah, because Karan Kasim in the chat, you said, he doesn't spot microaggressions. I don't. It's one of those things, isn't it?
We don't know the numbers. I mean, like saying before about like volume of them. We can see something happen once, in a chat, and we might go, oh, that's a bit suspect. But
Ruth and I talk about this all the time.
Yeah, we don't see
talk
the
about
other
the microaggressions
100 times you see it.
Yeah.
So if we see that one thing, that isolated thing that might be a bit weird or something like that, we might not necessarily flag that in our heads as being a problem. We just do that as, oh, that's one person being weird. It's that finding that one ant in the kitchen. It's
and
an ant colony there.
And it's tough because like sometimes it is just a person being weird, but a lot of times it's not.
And
it's not.
A lot of times it's under the guise of I'm helping.
Yes.
Out of like, I am being good to you, like that kind of thing. So it goes under the radar, and especially in group situations, so many times. And that if you do speak up or say anything, you look like the bitch.
Yep.
You do. Yeah. You look like the one who's whiny and complaining. It just is.
But the reality is that person is undermining you.
Exactly.
And that's, I think that's a big one. The whole, the unsolicited advice shall we say?
Oh yeah.
Unsolicited advice.
But in a meeting, I mean, I've certainly been in meetings where, somebody male has said, "You're undermining me on that decision, that fact, that whatever," and that's seen as being assertive.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you're a man, it's assertive. If you're a woman,
Yeah.
you're just being a bossy bitch, aren't you? Yeah, that's the technical definition when you look in the dictionary of
Or you
bloke
just
scenarios.
get talked over. Like that, obviously, is also the a potential outcome. Either you're bossy or you're talked over.
But also as well, I think in certain situations it can be seen as the norm, the thing to do, and then you see other women doing that to each other because they've seen a guy do that and they think that's how they need to do it or to get on in that situation or whatever, and suddenly it becomes a much bigger thing as well. I think sometimes these things can start a certain culture if it's in a organization or a chat or whatever, something where there's a group of people, it can really change the dynamics.
The seeds take root. They're hard to get out.
And I think that those sorts of things happen much more within communities like maker communities and things, because we are a clique, aren't we? We're a clique, and
We deny it, but
there
it's
are
true.
lots of things that are kind of unsaid rules within the community. So if you look at lots of big accounts and channels and things, they're all white men. Allie and I quite often play the game of trying to name female or non-binary or queer YouTubers with over 1 million subs. It's a fun game.
I did realize that there's one more to add to our list that I didn't, at least that I'd not previously mentioned, that neither of us had mentioned to each other in our chats. I found another.
But this is it. There's one more. Like
one. Nerd Forge, basically.
But this is the thing, is that we have a community which is, it has a certain culture, and we are quite cliquey. And I think it's sometimes comments on videos or social posts or things where you would look at it and go, oh, that person is just trying to help, they're giving advice, and actually they're not. They're undermining that person. Or quite often I'll sit and read a comment, or I'll go through and I'll think, would that person write that on the equivalent male content creator? And if the answer is no, it's the wrong sort of comment.
We were talking about the tools that one time, weren't we? About proper use of tools and safety and stuff like that, and the differences between basically women who use tools and butch manly, basically repeatedly getting shit for how they use them, regardless of how, and men don't. And admittedly, I will never stop thinking of the comparison of like Naomi Wu doing some sort of like motorcycle thing and getting all sorts of shit for safety. And she just shared a photo of Colin Furze on one of his homemade bikes with his tie flapping in the wind. And it's just like, how much shit did he get?
Well, then there's a load of amazing makers as well. Like I am really into, I like to make stuff. Like, I don't know if you watched his content, it's really funny. And I was watching his recent video with this lathe, and he does all sorts of things around this lathe. And I was watching it thinking, gosh, I literally got told off for wearing shorts in my own workshop.
Yeah, he was like barefoot, wasn't he?
He was barefoot.
Yeah.
He was like literally like dancing on top of the lathe.
Yeah.
It was hilarious. But I just sat there watching it thinking, if I'd have done that, or if a female content creator, or if someone else who wasn't, I'd literally never worked again.
Yeah. No, you would have been eviscerated, which is terrible because it was hysterical.
Yeah.
And we trusted, because this is a thing. Internalized bias is also a thing. We can definitely apply this to other women, and we sometimes do, because we have our own internalized shit. to deal with.
yeah.
Just worth saying that. But and it goes again both ways. We saw this guy dancing on his lathe in bare feet, and we trusted that he knew what he was doing.
He's got plenty of
Why?
subs. He's got loads of videos out. He must know exactly what he's doing, surely.
And I think that those are generally good reasons. And yet also maybe we trust him a little bit because he's a guy. And we maybe wouldn't have necessarily a white guy, a Western white guy, you know, like he's Australian, I think. Aussie?
No, he's American.
Is he American? I'm thinking
he's Australian.
No, he is Australian. There's another channel
no,
that's
like. I say the wrong. I made a thing. Sorry, not Alex makes stuff. I made a thing.
There is another channel with a similar name that is an American.
I made a thing. Yeah, sorry.
This is the guy. This is the guy dancing on the lathe barefoot. Yeah, he's Australian. So he's got big Australian energy, which is again very entertaining, very fun to watch. But he is a particular type of guy, and maybe we wouldn't have maybe we would have cringed a little bit more if he had been someone else and he'd done that. You know, maybe because again, we have internalized biases to unpick too. But
I think it's always a lot more obvious when there's something like two side-by-side examples of it. So for example, like certain decisions that I've made with my workshop, other male makers have made the same decision and never once been questioned or commented on it, but I am quite a lot. Or even to do with like when we're thinking about content creation, and I don't know about Lindsay because I know it's Instagram, but they're very, you're very similar, you're recording things, you're creating content. I have to think of so many different things when I'm creating content, and I really want to show that the real process of making something. So for example, when I built the workshop, there were days where I didn't do this on my own. It's a massive project. You'd be stupid to do this on my own. But I knew as soon as I edited into my video other people, I would get comments about the fact that I didn't do that, or that I wasn't involved. That wasn't you. You just stood in front of the thing. And, guys don't get that. You don't get that on your content. I don't have to sit there and think, I'm not sure I want to ask anyone for help, because if I do that, they will think that they made that thing and I didn't.
But also, if you hadn't included those shots,
you
would have also gotten called out for something entirely different.
There was no winning in that situation. I could have gone through all my footage and cut out every other person. Would have been slightly more boring. There was a lot of time lapse, but I think that's wrong. I think so often there are, and I know of female creators who put things up, who have help, they don't always show it, and then other people sit there and think, I can't do that because I don't know all these things, I can't do this, I don't have that, because we can't
that's a whole other issue.
Yeah, we can't show that side, because as soon as we show another person, particularly if they're a man, oh, we didn't do our thing, someone else did it.
Yeah.
Do you get a lot of shit, Lindsay? Because you do cool stuff with acid etching and stuff like that. Like you do like stuff that I imagine people see as dangerous, and so how could you?
It's a little different. It's a lot of times people will come asking me how to do certain things, which is kind of nice. I think that's great.
That's different, I'd say.
Yeah, and but I will say, when I was doing my awesome mixtape cassette thing, and I ran into a problem where I gotta, if you ever have been in this situation where you're like late at night and then you're like, you get a brilliant idea and then you do it, but you didn't think through all the steps because you were so excited. That's what happened to me. And I showed my issue that I did, and I said, hey, I did this, but I found a solution and this is what I did. Well, just even in that sort of situation, I got so many messages saying, this is how I should have done it. It was just drilling through sheet metal. It was not a big deal, but I just, anyway. But I had gotten so many comments about it. I'm like, yes, I know that was a way to do it. And And I started like defending myself for every single comment. And I was like, this is exhausting. Just to be having to deal with all the, oh, is that your cat? Sorry. I heard it meow. Okay, it was probably mine.
Hey, I actually no, she's in the basket again.
Oh, okay.
She's in the basket. She's asleep. She's going back to sleep. She came up briefly. She had a sniff. It was boring. She left.
But and I was telling someone on Instagram, another woman maker friend, and I was saying, you know, I don't really want to show my fails much because I get so many comments, and I think it happens for a lot of people if they show their fails. People generally want to be supportive and helpful, but
yeah.
But
no,
I will say this:
I
said, do not message me with how to fix this. I even like had it on letters, so if like my sound was off, I said I don't want to hear any solutions. I have this idea of what I want to do. Do not tell me what to do. And even then, people sent me things.
Yeah.
Like, I think I got 10 responses just for that. And they were telling me, and I was like, and it kind of goes back to what I said before, was like, this is like this idea of ownership over what you do. It's not mine, it's theirs. And
yeah. So they get input. They get to have input. Though I am curious. I want to ask everyone here, actually, people listening, those of the 5 of us. I want to ask everyone, do you feel like you are allowed to make mistakes? Like publicly?
After that, no.
I don't know, because sometimes I find myself, even though I've done loads of research on something, I'll feel like I'm second guessing myself when someone's like, you should have done this, you should have done that. And I'm like, particularly with the workshop, different people from different countries have different ideas about how I should have made my workshop, and they don't know about my particular space that it's in, and there's all these comments. And I got to the point where I'm just not replying, because if I reply with some things, I'm giving away too much about where I am, which is quite dangerous. And on the other side of it, I actually went and looked, because my workshop is built literally off blueprints, pretty much. Like, I asked Colin what he did. He told me. So everything, material, the whole thing, I'm like, his workshop's lasted for 10 years. That's fine. So I went back and checked on his video to see if he had any of the similar comments that I had on mine about different materials and things like that, and there was nothing. Absolutely nothing. And it just, again, things like that really highlight that people are almost looking for a fault. They're looking for something that they could, I wouldn't have done that, or you should do this, or they want to give that unsolicited advice in any situation, even if you're not asking for it.
Jamie, Andy, do you feel like you're allowed to publicly make mistakes? Like, honestly.
I think I'm definitely allowed to, just culturally. But I don't know how. I'm very much the same as Ruth, and no matter how much thought or research I put into it, I have to get to that point of overcoming that internal fear of cocking it up, of knowing that whatever I do put out there might be wrong anyway. But even with that fear, I know that I don't have to stress too much about it, other than maybe redo the project. I don't have to think about how it's going to affect my mental health or my interactions with anyone in comments.
You don't necessarily worry about people coming for you because you did something wrong.
I would worry about, oh shit, I've done this. Maybe I should redo the project.
But these are in situations where I've done the research. This is the thing. Or I've asked advice. Like, people were telling me stuff about like my wiring and things, and I'm like, I had it signed off by an electrician. That's the highest level of. Do you know what I mean? Like, what?
What else can
and
you
things
do?
like that. And I'm like, what else?
It's the legal requirement. Yeah.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? And then I'm sat there thinking, I literally one evening I was so stressed. I emailed my electrician. I was like, this is really weird. But I put a build of this on the internet and people are saying this and I think it's rubbish, but I just want to check with you. And I sent it and I was like, I felt so stupid.
It sucks
and he's
that they
like,
made
it's
you
fine.
doubt yourself too.
And I was like, what? This shouldn't be a thing.
You felt confident until that. Like you were literally, you felt fine about it until somebody made you doubt yourself. And that fucking sucks. That is just, I hate that. I hate people making other people doubt themselves. It's funny, actually, Elizabeth Bishop in the chat mentioned sharing some mistakes but not all mistakes. And I feel like for me, it's a similar thing, because I've put a great deal of effort on purpose in making my channel and my brand be around including failures. Even so, I still feel like to show my failures, they have to be manicured. Like the failure itself almost has to be manicured to be made presentable. It has to be a certain type of failure. Only certain types of mistakes or failures are okay. Whereas others, I feel like I will potentially lose credibility. I feel like I will potentially go from being seen as somebody who knows about something to somebody who doesn't. Only certain types of mistakes feel like acceptable mistakes, and others absolutely do not. And it sucks, because I do feel very strongly about the idea that as people in the public eye and as people who are content creators, that I would love to feel more able to share mistakes, simply to show people that we're human and we do make mistakes, and that's okay. But it is a very tricky dance, I find. Like, I have to do it a certain way.
Yeah, Allie, I agree with you. I'm the same way. I feel like I really want to be I can't talk. An authentic person. And I definitely want to show, and I'm a firm believer in, I was not born knowing how to do all these things, right? We all were beginners. We all had to learn something. And
it's okay to be a beginner.
Exactly. And I remember I was blacksmithing at an event over here, and we were doing a demo, and a bunch of little Girl Scouts came and they're watching, and I just said, girls, I want you to know that I didn't know how to do this when I was your age, and I learned, and this is what I'm doing now. And so just so you know that you can do this too, because I feel like a lot of times we'll see someone doing all this stuff and they do it so well, and it feels like, oh, I can never do this. Because I just saw Karim, you said that you couldn't make mistakes publicly, and I think a lot of times we see so many things that look beautiful and look amazing, but we don't see all the fails before that.
This is also why I wanted to ask everyone, because I don't necessarily know that it is strictly a gendered thing.
Oh, no, yeah.
This is part of the curse of social media, isn't it? Yeah. It's that idea that when we, and particularly I think for young people, as Lindsay sort of commented there about this sort of Girl Scout, there's that idea that what we see on social media is mostly a curated feed.
Oh, yeah,
we're seeing the best of somebody's we're seeing their show reel. We're not seeing all the effort, perhaps, or the mistakes, the learning that's gone in place to generate that. And a lot of people, Instagram particularly, a lot of people take really good care to curate. They'll remove. I mean, I've done this. I've kind of gone through occasionally, not for a while, but I've go through occasionally and kind of go, I'll take out some of those, because it's. For example, a few years ago when there was a lot of sticker swaps going on, or there was a lot of kind of like bombing. I don't like that phrase, but I can't think of a better phrase. Where kind of people just, you get 50 likes. You take a screenshot and you post that and go, oh, thanks so-and-so for doing a screenshot. And maybe stories is a better place for that. But I was putting some onto my feed because I didn't really get stories when I first started on Instagram. And I've got a lot of photos, but then these odd kind of ones in between. I'm just going to archive them.
You went back and curated it.
Yeah, you archive them to make it kind of look a little bit better. And so you get that kind of sort of feed. And if you think about making a video on YouTube, the number of times I've had comments from people saying, "Oh, you speak really well on YouTube. I like listening to you." If they saw the number of times that sometimes I have to kind of it's like the number of edits I've got, the number of clips that I've discarded where I've kind of just I'm speaking something and then I completely forget the word that I need to use. But I'm there and the number of ums and ahs, because I don't write scripts for when I do videos. Not that I've done one for a while, but I don't write scripts, so I get rid of the ums and ahs because that makes me sound like a better speaker. Now I can speak. While I was teaching, I trained myself to no longer use those little phrases that we pop into speech when we're trying to think about what to say. I've been in, as I'm sure some of you have, you've been in maybe a conference or a workshop, and this person speaking, I counted in a 20-minute keynote speech once at a conference, 60 ums in 20 minutes from this speaker.
And this is why I script.
It's like script is a great way of getting around it. Allie. But it is possible to train yourself to not say or okay or whatever little verbal tick. It's possible to train that.
Practice.
But
Practice
how
really
often?
makes perfect.
Yeah, how often in videos do we edit those out if we use them?
Why not?
So we're showing the best. Now, in terms of showing mistakes, I've done a few how-to videos on Tales from the Tinkerage, and I have at times kind of thought, should I put this up because I'm maybe not doing it the most correct way of doing something? But then, again, it's probably a privilege, a male privilege. I can't go, well, actually, I'm just going to put it up because it's the way I did it. Sometimes I might say, I don't know if this is the right way, but this is the way that's worked for me. I don't know if being able to say that is a male privilege, or the fact that I'm middle-aged.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because sometimes I'll share some of the comments around either some of the failures or some of the people that want to put one of those comments in, and a very lovely person, I'm not going to embarrass them by saying who it was, but I said, I had this thing they're commenting, I don't think they're particularly right, but it's just annoying that they keep commenting this. And they were like, well, maybe if you'd said thank you to those people that helped you in the video. And I was like, okay, this is a lovely person who comes from a place of well-meaningness, but just instantly it was like, I was like, but would you have said that if you'd seen that video? Would you expect Colin to say thank you? Would you expect the hacksmith on his video to say thank you? Like, these people are people who are related to me, who helped me in my video, who I did say thank you, not on camera, because I didn't need to say thank you to them on camera. But it was just that thing of like that coming into something and someone
you should be grateful.
Instantly making that assumption, well, if you'd have said thank you, you wouldn't have got those comments. And I was like, no, why do you expect me as a woman to say thank you, but not the other creator? And I think,
but also they would have bitched about something else.
Yeah, and I think this is the thing, is like, whether it was about failure or whether we're just talking about general content creation, if you put two posts side by side, if we did an experiment where Andy posted something and Lindsay posted something, exactly the same thing, the comments underneath, I mean, I'd just love to do that. Just to see, do you know what I mean? Because you would see a difference in that and the assumptions that people make purely on the fact that Lindsay is a woman.
It's that account, isn't it? The account by the guy who'd accidentally he'd accidentally signed in
Swap
as his
names.
female colleague.
Yes.
And
For the benefit of Jamie or Ruth, do one of you want to kind of highlight that for the benefit of those who maybe have not got familiarity with it? Or I can do it. I don't mind.
Jamie?
okay, yeah. So a guy who I think he was a manager, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
And there's a female colleague who was one of his subordinates who sounds like the wrong word, but he was
Part of his team.
Part of his team. Thank you, Andy. And he'd noticed that not that she was underperforming, because
I think they job shared. I think it was they were the same. They had the same job and they job shared.
Oh, there must be two very similar ones then, yeah. Because I think you're right. There is. I think I might be getting
because essentially,
like
they job shared. So they worked. The one that I read is that they job shared. They worked at the same time, and he was always saying, "How come she doesn't do as much as me? Like I must work, not like I must work harder, but my numbers are better than hers. Like why does it take her so much more time?" And then. Totally
he was clearing
accident,
cases quicker than she was.
Yeah, and totally by accident, they ended up like swapping email signatures, and she got through so much more work. And he started to notice that people were questioning. A client would be like asking questions, and he'd have to deal with all this like questioning and nitpicking and stuff before they agreed. And then he realized it was because it had her name on the bottom of the email. Whereas if he'd have said that to the client. They just agreed, and she was suddenly getting loads more work done, and the numbers completely shifted, and the only difference was the email signature at the bottom.
Because didn't they follow that on by actually just doing that as a matter of course, just to try and level the playing field where
I have friends who literally have pretend male colleagues
I was
who
just
answer
gonna
certain
say
types
that.
of emails for them.
I know of a couple of YouTubers who legitimately have male assistants that handle their emails. It's just them with a male named email. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. But again, perception. That may have actually been the conversation we had off of camera about how people are perceived, being a huge part of how they're treated, which is actually part of the reason why I often proactively, I suppose, lump myself in with women is because that's how I get treated by lots of people. Like it's people just default to that. And so like, even though I'm not a woman, I get treated like one because people think I am. People assume I am and therefore treat me like a woman. So like, even though I'm not, I have so many shared experiences with women that I often I'm certainly more in this group than in the men group. Like realistically speaking, if we're talking about like lived experiences, it definitely skews in one direction over the other. Obviously, I also have experiences that are unique that women don't have, but it's often easier, I suppose, in a way, to put myself in the one category because how you are perceived influences how you were treated, as evidenced by this email story. Like, yeah, if people think you're a man, they're going to treat you differently than if they think you're a woman. And the insert other if they think you're blanks here. It is so much about perception. It's wild. Less about who you actually are.
Well, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Because people sort of by their nature tend to just make an assumption based on their own lived experiences, and if they've never experienced, interacting as another gender, or they've never experienced communicating with someone as non-cisgendered, they don't necessarily know straight away how to deal, or they don't have that primer necessarily, and I think that's part of the problem that Andy and I wanted to try and sort of highlight here, is the fact that a lot of the time we as the cis presenting bloke types aren't aware of all of these things. Bearded blokes, yeah.
Bearded bloke type.
We're not
Archetype.
aware of these things, of of just how much of a problem it is, or just how much our it's like the going to the checkout and something doesn't scan, and while the cashier is trying to punch numbers in or something, that it's that comment that almost every single person in a shop makes of, oh, if it doesn't scan, do we get it for free? And saying that as one person one time, you think, hey, that was funny, I had a good interaction there. But that person on the other side of that checkout has heard that same thing 100 times that day. And
you don't necessarily think about that.
And that's the thing is I know from conversations with peers who, on times when I have been able to catch something and said, why have you just said that? But because it was funny. They know I didn't mean it, or stuff like that. And you go, well, how do you know that? Because your frame of reference is just your frame of reference. I'm seeing you saying that, and that sounds weird. It's that lack of perception, I think, is a big problem. That lack of awareness that your perception can be different. Whether that's a bias or a privilege, it's something that we're oblivious to.
Or even just like accepted cultural norms. Like,
of course,
that plays a huge role.
So I have a son and a daughter, and we try to raise them in a way to see like, don't see stereotypes, that my son can wear a dress if he wants to, or it's okay to cry and show emotions, which he does often, and my daughter is allowed to be angry and yell and whatever, although that's really frustrating as a parent. But I will say this, I had a very, and I think a lot of it is how we're raised and how we move in this society and culture of ours.
So much of it is how we're raised.
A Western, especially, obviously we are all in a Western culture and society, right? And my son, I remember, this was obviously pre-pandemic, because I was in his classroom for a Christmas party, and they were doing a gift exchange, and I was probably zoning out, as I do sometimes, and one of the kids had gotten a present and they're trying to open it, and one of the parents said, oh, we should have one of the boys open it, because they're strong. This is 4th grade, by the way.
This is a present wrapped in paper, right? Like
no, like they were trying to open it up. It had the like toys are in that plastic, which you're like, okay.
But it wasn't made of adamantium or something.
No, it was not. And these are probably $5 toys. What? Anyway, my son, and I did not even hear it, but my son just stands up in the middle of the room and he puts his hand up in the air like this. He's like, girls are just as strong as boys. And he says it really loud. Everyone hears. And I didn't hear the first part, so I was like, what?
Like,
of
what?
Course. And then
yes, but
all
what's your point?
all the girls at his right, and all the girls at his table were like, yeah, and saying his name, and thank you so much. So anyway,
that must have been huge in a way, like for those little girls,
for those girls, for their friend to stand up to announce to the whole classroom to say they're just as strong as all the boys in the classroom was such a big deal. And the parents and teachers didn't say anything, which is fine. I maybe they said something, but it wasn't like in conflict with that. Like they just were like, oh yeah, like agreed. But I just thought that he was not just that he just said it quietly, but he stood up and he shook his hand in the air and like pretty much like shouted it for everyone to hear. So it was like probably like
flag.
one of my proudest parents moments for sure. But like that kind of instance, I thought was like a great ally way of, you know, and it was something that seeing what you do as a parent goes out into the world in a way that is in some ways countercultural, because how many times have you heard that, oh, let's get a boy or a man to do this because they're strong. That assumption that they're I mean, that harms men. That kind of thinking can harm men as much as it can hurt other people.
Yeah. I mean, that's something.
The expectation to be strong all the time.
Yeah, that's something I face with my wife quite often, because she works in warehousing and she's lifting power tools, like big heavy boxes and things all day long. She's very, very physically strong.
Certified badass, I believe, is what you're looking for here.
100%, absolute 100%.
I've seen your wife. Like I definitely, like 100%.
I did good. But although I'm large, I do weightlifting and things like that. I have back problems. So quite often when there's anything that's even remotely with any gravity in it that needs picking up, my wife will be the one that runs over and grabs it and picks stuff up, because she wants to make sure I don't hurt myself, and she's more than capable. So whenever we get like a delivery that's maybe a couple of kilos or something, it's just not heavy by any means. There's been like a few occasions where someone's come to the door holding a box with two hands. They've just taken it out of the van and they've come and knocked on the door, and she's answered, and they've gone, "Oh, it's heavy."
And she'll lift it
but she'll lift it out of their hand with like one hand and go, "Oh, thank you." And just like the looks on their faces, or someone will try to hand something to me and she'll go, "Oh no," and she'll take it like on a reached angle that would be more uncomfortable for anyone normally. We'll take it out of my path to save it from being passed to me or things like that. And she gets it at work all the time. That gender role kind of being put on. Of like people going, "Oh, let me help you with that." She's like,
"Got it.
No, you'll slow me down."
I think as well, sometimes that gender bias, once it's been like pointed out, you start to really see it everywhere. Because I think that's one of the things is I feel quite lucky that the first time I realized that as a woman I would be treated differently was when I was like 16. Like I feel like I did really well to get to that age and be like, "Oh, I can do everything a guy can do." And then it was only when I realized I went out into the wide world and was like, "Oh, people see me differently for being a woman." But I think as well, it's, I meet lots of young girls who are like, "Oh, this stuff doesn't happen anymore really," or whatever. And I'm like, it does. And we still need to call it out, and actually educating girls and boys to call it out, everyone to call it out and say that, both sides of those like gender biases, it's really important to kind of sit there and think, actually, no, like let's not.
Yes.
And those with children, I think, we talk a lot about, well, I want to do this because I've got daughters. Well, actually, it's just as important. I feel a lot of responsibility having a little white boy.
Yeah, I was going to say,
actually,
there's a lot more to teach to sons than to daughters, perhaps, in this particular case. The girls, they'll probably figure it out, but the boys, they God, your kiddo's doing great, Lindsay. That was such a good. I'm genuinely I'm proud of him. I don't even know him. Like that's just great. I love it. I was gonna say I did see this this question.
Yeah, Neil, for the benefit of the audio listeners, Neil from NMB Woodworks has posed the question. He has a fear that jumping in to call something out can be seen as him trying to defend and thereby inadvertently saying that the female creator, or just the woman, the MB, whoever in the situation is addressing, can't defend themselves. So,
that happened to me one time. That happened to me one time. I had a post a while back on my work experience in the space shuttle, and it was kind of talking about safety in engineering, and I had like a person like in the comments sections publicly. I turned off comments because I just didn't want to add anymore, but pretty much saying that I was wrong about this and stuff like that, even though it was I had been working as an engineer and all this stuff. But anyway, this guy was like, "You're wrong," and da-da-da. And he was like just kind of trying to, and it was very personal for me. And I had a friend message me, and he asked me, he's like, "Can I write back to that douchebag?" And I was like, I don't know. Like, I was kind of trying to be like, I wanted it to still be like a positive thing. And then, but I was like, I don't know. And he's like, oh, too late. And he has written back, and he really got into that guy. And actually, it made me feel really great that I was supported by my friend, because it was almost so personal that I couldn't really write back, because it was like, for me to write back felt like how to say it, like I don't want to say beneath me because it sounds so arrogant. But I really felt like that. Like, I just was like, I don't really want to respond to him, and
How I often feel that.
And he doesn't deserve a response for the way he talked.
He doesn't deserve to talk to you.
Like, pushing you down. He's making you feel like you're smaller, and by replying, you're kind of almost justifying his ridiculous comment with an answer. And I think so often having someone else come in, and the thing that always frustrates me in a way is that the first people to message me when things like that happen are often, it's usually Allie, but or other female creators, or other people who aren't white men. Essentially, we should have a term for everyone else that isn't a white man.
All right, like, I am a fucking tiger. I will go, and I will eviscerate people on behalf of my friends. So yeah, no, it's usually me.
But I do think it is that thing, isn't it? If you're trying to navigate this whole like power dynamics in the comments, and just having a guy come in and do it just literally can make all the difference.
Now, as I say, 3D printing professor, aka Joe, made a comment in the comments that I totally agree with, which is that you don't have to, like, you don't have to say something in a way that is like you are defending the person. Like, it is fully possible. It was a previous one, actually. Like, you can, there is a difference, I suppose, between being all like, don't worry, I've got this, ladies. Yeah, like that,
white knight it.
That's exaggerated, obviously, but like, but you don't have to be defending that person to call out bad behavior. And further to that, like, maybe a good rule of thumb even is, if you are if you're basically maybe just saying the same things that she is saying, or that they're saying, in a different way, you may be talking over that person. Long as you're not talking over that person, long as you're not like pretending to speak for them, I suppose, it should be fine, because as we've gotten some really good examples here, like, chances are stepping in will be better than not. Saying something will be better than not. And here's an important thing, and I will say that it took me a really long time to learn this. So it's okay if you don't necessarily have this worked into your own internal psyche yet, because it is hard and it takes time. But you will make mistakes. You will fuck up. You will sometimes do the thing that you think is the right thing, and it will be the wrong thing, and someone will be pissed off at you. And that's okay, because we're all human. And it is infinitely better to try and to fuck up than it is to not try. Because I do think, and again, I am guilty of this myself with other things, with areas where I hold more privilege. It is so much easier to not say something, because you're just like, I might say the wrong thing. I might get it wrong. I might fuck it up. And I'm just going to say nothing because it's easier. And that isn't the right thing necessarily. It is definitely better to try. And then also be open to hearing how you maybe did wrong and learning from it and doing better. Because obviously going out and making mistakes and then doubling down and refusing to hear how maybe you could do better, that's less good. But I do think that that if you're a particular type of person, like I am, mistakes in this regard, mistakes where people get hurt, can be really scary. And because you don't want to hurt anyone. You don't want to hurt anyone. You do want to do it right. And you want to be a good friend. You want to be a good ally. And so maybe you don't speak up when you see the thing because you are afraid you might say the wrong thing. You might actually offend the person that you're trying to help. And then that happens again and again and again. And then you're just never saying anything. But if you tried every time, chances are you wouldn't have got it wrong every time. You would have gotten it right sometimes, and it would have been better. So it's always better to try and to do your best, I suppose, to accept that mistakes will happen, and sometimes there will be consequences for those mistakes. But I think we all owe it to each other to try and make this world a better place, because it kind of sucks right now. It's not very good right now. We gotta improve it this much.
A little bit of something is better than a lot of nothing.
Yeah, exactly. I often this is slightly wanky terminology here, but I honestly think of it as harm reduction, a form of harm reduction.
Yeah, I like that.
Which is, for those of you who aren't familiar with like the concept of harm reduction, it's usually about taking actions in an area that there is some sort of danger involved, but danger cannot be removed entirely. So
risk mitigation, isn't it?
Yeah, if you can just make it, it's not even about risk mitigation so much as just making things a little bit better where you can't make them 100% good. Harm reduction is frequently used in kind of programs around addiction and helping people with serious addiction and stuff like that, people that you know are potentially going to go out and use maybe dirty needles or do other things that are incredibly dangerous. And you can't necessarily stop them from using, but you can provide them with clean facilities and with things that reduce the harm involved. So like, yeah, you're not necessarily going to get it always right. But it's still harm reduction, I suppose, in a way. I might also be totally butchering the term, and if so, I'm sorry.
Something I would like to add to that from a bloke experience, from my own experience in navigating this to where I'm at now, is that for those of us who do step in and who do try and help with harm reduction or help with calling out bullshit or shitty behavior and things like that, is don't be doing it for the credibility. Don't be doing it for the attaboys. Don't do it for the cookie. Yeah, don't be going, look, I did the thing. Do it because it's the right fucking thing to do.
We know, we saw, we were there.
Exactly, and that's the thing is you don't need to be in there going, yeah, I called. Did you see? I did that thing. I was in there because, yeah, like you say, the person you're doing it for has seen that, and yeah, like you say, they might have appreciated it. They might not have appreciated it.
You may never know even.
And yeah, and that's something that you need to reconcile. Is that you might not know if you fucked it up. You might not know if you've got it right. You might not know if you've helped or hindered. But doing something,
keep doing it. Just keep doing it.
It's better than just walking away, or better than neglecting it or leaving it.
And a lot of times it's. Oh, go ahead.
No, go on.
I just was saying, I was going to say, it's a lot of times it's a small things. It's not generally big, like grand things. It's a lot of times it's just maybe responding back a little comment. That's not necessarily, that's easy to do. That's not a grand gesture, I should say.
And these things matter.
But they matter, and they matter. And but to do those little things, it's build up. Kind of like the microaggressions, they build up. So how about we do the other things?
Micro
positivities?
That doesn't sound very good. No. I feel like there's something better word.
We'll think about that. Well, go ahead, Ruth. Sorry.
I'm gonna say these things build a better, just general culture in general. Like I know of channels who have, and they're actually, I'm thinking of 2 channels that are run by men, but like one has particularly not fed the trolls, but felt the need to like answer everything and at times be quite defensive, and the other has just kind of laughed off a lot of the situations. And their comments over the last few years have developed in very different ways because they've fed very different things. And I think that happens across, there are certain people who, because the community has stuck up for them, no one would even dare say those things. And I think that should become the norm of like, actually, if you want to see more diversity within making, if you want to see it become a safer space, call it out, because then it just doesn't become acceptable. And you can see that in different people's content when you look at their comments, because things have been allowed to grow and they haven't been closed down straight away, where in other places where that doesn't create a response, they don't get that, it doesn't feed the fire, you see that developing in very different ways. And I just think that's really important when it comes to content on the internet as well, whether it's Twitter or Instagram or YouTube, is if you are closing down those things and saying, as a community, we don't accept that, then you will see a difference so many years down the line.
Absolutely.
Yeah, again, the seeds thing. The seeds works both ways. You can plant seeds of misogyny and of, inequality, or you can plant seeds that have positive yields. Like the seeds works, it goes both ways.
Like random acts of kindness.
Yeah. These things do make a difference.
I think as well, when it comes to people maybe coming across new makers, or they're wanting to be an open community as well, it's just being aware of our own biases when it comes to content that we see as well. So thinking about and we see it all the time. I know a lot of people in the West really struggle with the way that certain content creators that aren't from the West dress, and that causes a lot of controversy. Yes. And actually, that is not, I think we all go into situations and make assumptions about who people are, the way that they dress, the way that they speak, all of these things. And if we're wanting to be an open community, it's going in and whenever we come across something new or we think something, it's catching ourselves. It's saying, okay, why do we think that? Or why does that particular picture or that post, why do I instantly think that thing, positive?
Why do I feel this way?
Yeah, just constantly assessing that and being much more aware of not just brainlessly going through our feeds and thinking, oh, I don't like that content, I do like that, but thinking, why? What is it about that I don't like? Why do I think that this person has less authority than that? Oh, is it because they happen to be particularly femme, and I think everyone in this industry should not look like that, or you can't wear those certain things and also have these skills? I think, there's
you think it's disrespectful to show skin. This can go in a lot of directions, but
you can't have boobs and be knowledgeable, all that sort of jazz.
Well,
you definitely can't show them. Jesus.
That is the phrase, isn't it? That is Naomi's phrase, everything has merit until merit has tits.
I didn't say any names in any of this.
No names were mentioned here. No names were mentioned. But that is a good phrase.
It is.
A very good phrase. I think it is a surprisingly true phrase. And
Unfortunately.
and I realized that we were kind of like nearing the end of our time, but I realized what Ruth was saying made me think of another thing that I think is a thing that maybe a lot of people don't understand that is good to understand, and that's the concept of equity versus equality.
Totally.
Because I think a lot of people are like, again, like that kind of like, I'm on board with equality. I see everyone the same. I don't see gender. Is great, except for
You need to.
we don't live in that world. We don't live in that world. So we don't need equality. We need equity. And again, for those of you who don't know what equity is, because apparently I'm in teacher mode today, equity is about giving people what they need to reach a level of equality. Because you cannot give everyone the same thing and expect to get everyone to the same level if they're starting from different places. So when it comes to content creation and it comes to those of us who are making our way as not men, like we don't get seen as much. We don't get mentioned as much. We don't get accolades as much. We don't like it. It is very easy to see, though a lot of people would argue that, and I've seen them do it. That's just not true. That's just not true. It's fucking true. So like, it might, I suppose, feel maybe unfair to make an effort to support, like loudly support, basically be like Lindsay's son and loudly support, women and trans folk and non-binary people in the maker community more than men, because that doesn't seem fair. Like that's not equal. I should be equally shouty about both, except for men they're already up here and they don't even have to try as hard to get here. So like, I think that maybe I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase this, also potentially not naming names. I think that a lot of well-intentioned guys treat everyone like guys in a way. And because in their mind, like, well, I'm not treating you any different. I'm treating you just like I would any other guy, including all of the potential negative parts. And that can have such a bigger impact on somebody who isn't actually on equal footing. So like there is that combination of like, be more loud, be more supportive, boost women makers more than you think you should. Like, yeah, like take the amount that you think you should do and then do more, because there is no equity yet. There is no equality yet. And the algorithm sucks.
And we're talking about YouTube because that's what Allie and I do, but we've just had
also
a massive
Twitter
data leak for
and
Twitch,
Instagram,
and we've seen a lot of those biases across the field on Twitch. Like, it's not just about the maker community. I think within making, it's particularly obvious, because if you're making has been seen as traditionally predominantly male, and so there's still quite a lot of headway to be made within that. But you can see it across all social media and platforms that actually, in industries that have been in the past seen as male jobs, roles, whatever, then anyone that isn't, all the not men, struggle to be heard. And even things like the algorithm is against us.
It's literally everything.
And people go, oh no, it's not like, oh, everyone says, you should have a woman in the thumbnail, you should do this, and you're like, no, but if people are coming to your content thinking you are less knowledgeable, you must be just the face of that thing, then it doesn't matter what thing you have to bring people to your video. They are then watching your video, your content, they're seeing it as lesser than the same content done by a guy.
So if it feels like too much, it's probably the right amount, I guess, is what I'm saying.
I like that.
but also kind of going in the other direction, the do not necessarily, I suppose, like, I'm struggling to find the right words here, but like, again, I guess the undermining, the berating, the questioning, the second guessing. It doesn't matter if you would second guess a man. It has a much stronger impact when you do that publicly to a woman. There is a lot more chips on the table, I guess, in a way. I am definitely still frustrated and smarting over the fact that when I do certain things within the 3D printing space that are kind of seen as being difficult or, expert level stuff, that I am continuously told that I cannot do it in a way that feels very like this isn't personal. Like, I would say this to everyone. Like you're you're just one of the guys. Like, I'm just treating you like one of the guys. It's very much the vibe I get from it. But it's like, but I'm not. Dude isn't gender neutral. Like, it's just not.
Well,
like,
that's that question that we've commented on our sort of guidance notes.
Dude is not gender neutral. I am not one of the guys, and as much as I appreciate not necessarily being treated like a woman, I am not one of the guys, and I don't have all the privileges of being a guy. And so, like, when you publicly cast doubt on my expertise, the impact of that is so much bigger than if I had been a man. And so in that kind of that equity thing, like, just stop and maybe think and consider this, the impact of what your words might have, even if they are not necessarily like gendered sorts of things, like just saying the things that you would say to every other guy to someone who is not, does not have the same impact. It has a very different one. And being aware of that, I think, is important. I think that's what I was trying to say. It is getting late here.
I think on the practical side as well, like if you're looking around you and everyone looks like you, then do more to change that. But also don't expect, if it's like an event, expect to pay people. Like, don't just expect the woman or the not man, I like the not man phrase, to come in and do the work.
Not man.
And not be paid. And do you know what I mean? Like, if you want to genuinely make a difference, then you have to actually do that work, and you have to look at the opportunities and
pay your women speakers, pay them more, maybe.
And also as well, like, actually think about those opportunities and think, if you are in a position and you're talking about, well, I'm a guy and I have, I have a seat at the table and I'm bringing more people in. The fact that there is even a table is like a whole level of privilege and stuff. There shouldn't even be, like, the fact you are counting yourself, oh, well, I'm really good. I'm a gatekeeper. I open the door. I bring people in. Like, there shouldn't
tear down
be
the
freaking table or the gate.
Tear down the gate.
Do you know what I mean? Like, burn it down. Burn it. But essentially, start thinking about that. If you have things that are events or anything kind of like community things, and you are predominantly a set group, and it's you want to make a difference, invite more people in, open it up, like stop holding on to that thing.
Safe.
Yes.
Make the space safe, and then the people will come.
Because so often as well, a lot of these things, a lot of the things that make people view not men with authority is being in certain spaces and having a voice in certain spaces. And that can make a massive difference step by step within that culture. And so being able to do that is, as an ally, and being that person that asks those questions and say, why do we do it like this? What questioning, and not just taking the norm as what we've always done is also really important.
Yes.
Shaking things up is not easy.
No, it's getting outside the comfort zone, isn't it? Getting outside that bubble of what we're used to.
And sometimes breaking things down.
Yeah, being aware that things do need to change, or that attitudes or structures of things need to be reassessed, and to have a look at those things that are stacked in a certain way.
I feel like the takeaway homework for everyone, kind of following on what Ruth is saying, is to go look up tokenism, and then don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't just invite a woman to be your token woman, because that's not good. That's not so good. Don't do that.
I think as well, like I've spoken to particularly like women in engineering. There's been a very low number of women with engineering for a very long time, and there have been fears in the past from women of, well, if I invite someone in, they take my place, because we can only have one woman, we can only have one black person, we can only have one. Do you know what I mean? And I think that
no.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
I think my battery died.
No.
Possibly.
But if you're creating a community where people are worried about that is not a good community. Do you know what I mean?
It's like the Smurfette complex. It's kind of what they refer to. And it's so funny. We'll watch a movie, and it'll be like, I remember seeing, it was like Batman, one of the Batman movies a while ago, and we were watching it, and there was like one woman, and then they brought in another woman. I was like, one of those women, they're bad. They're gonna be a villain. There can't be two good women. One of them is evil, and sure enough, she turned and she was evil. So
I forget there's a lore of that kind of stuff, of how you can take the portrayal of a non-bloke in any kind of TV or book or film, and you put it to this set of questions, and it kind of ranks the writing. I forget what the thing's called. But
there's a thing, isn't there? It's like, are there two women on screen talking to each other first? Yes,
that's the test.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah.
And it is
made by Alison Bechdel.
Exactly.
There you go. I have too many cables.
Never heard of that. Yeah.
But this is the sort of thing that, we're talking about, what can we do to make this a better place for the next generation? Lots of people have mentioned in the chat about sons and daughters and things. And I think so often a lot of this is, it's about us curating the space for them as well, and showing them that actually, as little boys, they can be emotional, and that you don't go off and say, oh, you're brave, do you know what I mean? Or you're just using one thing. You're talking about some of the things that are seen as, things that women do, things that men do, whatever. You kind of get rid of some of the BS around all of that, and you're creating these spaces. And if you haven't already, if you're saying, well, I don't even have a clue where to start with that, burn the thing down and start again.
Yeah. And I like what Kerm says right here. He said, it's very difficult for us to bring in more non-men members, as it is intimidating for non-members to come into the open evenings. I completely agree with that, because I'm at a makerspace right now, and we have a handful of women, but mainly it's men. Either it's about 20-year-old to 30-year-old men, or it's like ancient. I say ancient. It's retired guys in their retirement years, looking for like a social atmosphere, and they have a lot of knowledge of tools, and so that going in and saying, oh, I want to learn this, or I want to learn this, can be very intimidating to be surrounded by this. And in our makerspace, I mean, there's quite a bit of makerspaces in the Houston area. I think, Allie, I don't know, did you go to?
I've never been to any.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought you were at TXRX, but
no,
they're known as not being so nice, and so so our makerspace, they like to say we're the friendliest makerspace, But even still, it is very intimidating and I know it can be so intimidating for them because I was there, like and I've been there for years now, and I try to make it a point, if there is a non-man who comes into our space, to really make them feel welcome. But even still, it can be still like, I can't be the only one to do that. And it's really tough. And you have to,
It's a lot of work.
You have to just kind of be aware. It's good to say hello. That works. And not make assumptions is a really good one too, about maybe I think a good way to go about this is to come from like a place of humility and of questioning.
Yes, that's good.
Just because you are a member and you know everything about your space, they can bring something to your space. And maybe to ask them, what do they like to do? What are they into? And not make assumptions that, oh, we have this really great sewing room, even though sewing is making.
Yeah,
it is great. Not male, female, whatever. It's not. There is no gender assigned to sewing. But I think to kind of come in with a questioning and not like a pandering questioning, but a genuine, authentic way would be good, helpful. We had a woman come in about 2 years ago. I'm like, there was a COVID year, but we weren't open during that time. And she was a cosplayer. And she was a bodybuilder, cosplayer. I think she has a following of 14K on Instagram at that time. She's way more now. And she, anyway,
it's not relevant to my interests at all.
But anyway, I think all the guys were very intimidated to talk to her and welcome her, and she was intimidated to talk. She was nervous about talking to anyone else, and it was like no one wanted to talk, and I was like, oh my gosh. So, and so those sorts of things happen too, and so. Yeah, and then it just kind of, you just still need to be friendly in a way that's not scary.
Peachy Crafton just made a really good point. He said, even as a man getting into the maker community, there's an assumption that you know how to do things, or you know how to use a tool, and particularly perhaps if you're an older man, if you're grey-haired, big beard, oh well, you must have been around tools for a long time. That's one thing. I've never used a planer. I've used a plane, but I've never used a planer, electric planer. I've never used one.
Yeah, same here.
I probably have an idea of how to use one. I know what it does, but I've never used one.
Ruth, you know how to use one?
Yes, I've used a planer.
See?
Yeah. Now, and so going to a wood yard, you said, for some intimidating. Wood yards, metal yards, there. I haven't stepped in. I've been in wood yard, I think once, proper wood yard, once. Metal yard, I've never been in a metal yard, and it scares the wits out of me. And even trade-specific merchants, plumbers merchants or electrical merchants. Generally, I'll go to the big box store, or I'll go to, in the UK, we've got things like Screwfix and Toolstation, which are generic. They're not really big box stores because it's all. You go to a counter.
No, we don't have Home Depot here.
But he said, but he goes on to sort of say, it may be intimidating for us, but perhaps as men, we need to appreciate that actually, perhaps for the non-men, it can be even more intimidating still.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to.
I think one of the interesting things that these things aren't solved overnight, but one of the interesting things that I've been working with Lincoln Electric on is trying to find more role models and highlight that. And I know that that's not always easy to do, but I know that lots of having, for example, schools, I know now in DT departments, they will have a wall of different people who do different jobs and different faces and different skills. And I think, you know, if you can obviously bring other people in with some of those skills to kind of showcase that, and also it's that thing of thinking like, well, actually we want to bring in more non-men, so maybe we should specifically think about how we do that and change some of the things we're doing to make the space seem more welcoming. Or for example, we just did some welding days, and it's not necessarily mentioned, but all of us who demo and help out and stuff are all female welders, and having that for the students, I think it's easier with students maybe than adults, but having that students, you know, there were a lot of teachers who were like, I just think that was great, because it was never said, like, it's never highlighted necessarily as a thing, but you could see a lot more of the girls and the boys getting more engaged in it, because it wasn't that thing of like, well, I can't do that, or, you know, actually there's a whole range of people here who are demoing stuff, and I feel like I could be like that. There's not just one type of person here, and I think showcasing that, again, there's a whole conversation about you're putting the onus on people who are already, you know, having to really fight to be in that space. But I know that a lot of people are quite passionate to try and change that. And we know we put ourselves out there and deal with this crap because we want to make a difference and we want to change that. And we want to bring in more people and show that, you know, you can be very feminine and be a maker. You can be, you know, particularly into other things. You don't just have to be into making. You know, there are lots of
wear
different...
a ball gown.
Exactly.
Well, maybe not at the same time.
Well, maybe in a few months' time you might be able to do it at the same time. But
depends what you're doing.
That sort of thing, you know.
And what the ball gown's made of. Yeah, you probably don't want something nylon if you're welding.
We'll have a conversation, maybe not online on the internet right this minute, Andy. But yeah. But this is the thing, isn't it? Is that actually there isn't a silver bullet. I think so often we think there is one quick fix, and it isn't. It's lots of little steps that take time. It's been like this for a long time, and we have to put in that time. We have to be patient. We have to call it out. We have to do all these things if we want to get something out of it. It's, you know, we're makers. We're all used to putting the time and effort into making something, and if we want to make our community more diverse and accepting, we have to put that same amount of time. None of us would think, you know, we wouldn't expect to make a beautiful table or a beautiful sculpture in 20 minutes. We all know that isn't how this works. So
Ruth has perfectly said.
We need to do the same for our own, for our own community.
Our own spaces. Yeah,
it's a learning curve, isn't it? It's acknowledging that there's growth to be had. It's finding information. It's practicing those things. It's exactly the same thing as learning to use a new tool or learning to make a table, in the sense that it takes active engagement. It takes active participation to learn something new, to challenge your inability to do something. You know, I've not used a planer. At some point, I'm going to have a go at using a planer. I've got you know, things I need to plane. That's
you just got to be careful to try to keep all your fingers.
Exactly.
And then be prepared to go from there.
I think that's the thing.
I'm not coming for anyone's fingers, all right? Like, not yet.
Just approach with caution, you know, like with the, you know, sort of knuckles over and stuff like that, just in case. And
yes, no, whatever rules you apply to planers should also probably be applied to me.
Fingers tucked in and use push block.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, that's a good rule of thumb. I feel like we have done a very good job of hitting some really key and important points. And it's really funny because I think that almost everything we talked about today could be applied to the how do I make my makerspace more welcoming question. Like I feel like pretty much everything we talked about could be applied to that and should be applied to that. Because part of the reason why I've never been to a makerspace is that, you know? So it's
Well,
safer
like you
here.
said from the
Safer in my
offset,
own home with my
is
robot
what can we
friend.
do in general to improve the situation all round, and that's something that we can't thank you enough for giving
We
us
get some good
these
stuff, I think.
tools. And but like you say, it's things that can be applied to makerspaces or general interactions online or
Or events. Like, if you see something and you're like, hang on a minute, why is the lineup of this all white men? Call it out. Do you know what I mean? Don't expect. Well, don't wait for us lot to call it out and be seen as whiny. Oh no, they've done it again. You know. Particularly if you have some sort of platform. I know a lot of people who are not men have a platform because they feel like they should, to show other people that actually they can do it. I think a lot of us would be quite happy making in our own little world and not sharing stuff we do on social media, because it would be so much easier in our lives to not have to deal with that element of it.
The stuff
But
I'm
we do
doing
it.
as I'm doing it.
Exactly. We do it because we want to make the space better. And if you like the content from people that are not men and you want to support it, then start supporting that content, but also calling out when all that seems to be on show is like white men. You know, like ask where's the diversity? Why have we not featured so and so? What's this? Like, put your voice behind those people, and that will start to make a difference.
I did have this one going, Ruth, with what you're saying is I did have a well-known maker reach out to me, and he said, hey, I just want you to know that I contacted this company that I work with, and I recommended you for this particular, like, as a brand sort of thing. And then I was just like, I didn't even ask for it or anything, but I was really just encouraged by that. And I think that would, like, if you have, I think brand sort of stuff, that's a great way to support other, non-men people out there in the maker community. If that's something, I mean, that's just an idea, but that's what happened to me. I was like, I don't do that, but thank you for thinking of me.
Yeah. It doesn't even necessarily matter that it wasn't maybe the right thing. The fact that it was done. The fact that it was done meant something.
Totally.
And I think everyone who's listened to this should go away from this again with the story of your son standing up and just loudly proclaiming a thing with his whole being, and do that. Be the person who goes out and loudly supports, who supports women makers, who supports people of marginalized genders doing stuff publicly on the internet, which is really hard and scary. Like, be loud about it. Be emphatic. Go and secure people sponsorship deals behind their back.
Pretty much.
Just not with Makita.
What?
Oh, that's
what?
Ruth's kind of going,
feel,
hang on, I've got Makita.
I feel like the Makita thing, the Senorita Makita thing.
Wait, what?
What's going on?
No, okay,
so here we go. It was a while ago, but Makita used to do this thing called Senorita Makita, where they would,
I already hate it.
It was like a pageant thing, and then they would go and use tools at trade shows, and they weren't necessarily trained to use tools, so they would quite often.
They were booth bunnies.
Yes, and it was called out. It was actually Simone, I think, that first called them out over it. And it was just it's a
shame. I love their color scheme.
Their catalogs were full of it as well, weren't they?
Pardon, sorry.
I said I love their color scheme. That's a shame.
So, what did Andy say? Sorry.
I said their catalogs were kind of Here's a grinder.
Yeah.
But
the name, though. Oh God.
Also feel that, like, I don't know. My opinion on it when I was I didn't get my tools from Makita, by the way. I got them from a distributor of Makita. Was if after calling them out, if Simone can use them in her videos, I feel like we can, and it's not my place to fix it. They make good tools, and to be fair, they actually make the only tools that are small enough for my diddy hands. So I'm kind of limited because a lot of tools are actually just not suitable for.
It also sounds like they did change it, so
yeah. Have they changed their approach?
Yeah,
Right.
they don't do it now. They got called out on it, and they don't do it now, and they support other female.
Well, there you go. Then yeah, it's fine.
They are a very. Yeah, I don't think they're the only one. I think if it's a bit like, if I was to go through my workshop and get rid of everything that had ever been advertised in a certain way, I think I'd probably only be left with like the Aldi specials, because they're usually pretty good at advertising with like women in the pictures and stuff. But most of the brands have done that. It's a bit like it's a bit, you know, it's a bit like when you go into on a factory floor and it's just covered in porn. It's like I'm hoping that's changing too, but it's just a cultural thing, and we have to change that and fight for it. But yeah,
more work to be done.
So at least there is recourse then.
Yeah, if you like Makita, I would buy Makita. I wouldn't have bought Makita 4 years ago when they were still doing it, but I feel like now they've stopped doing it.
It's teal. I want it.
I know.
I'm very simple. I have simple wants and needs.
But yeah, if anyone else knows of any like smaller tools that are also just as good and powerful, let me know.
I also have surprisingly small hands, so
yeah.
Like maybe not necessarily as small as Ruth's, but surprisingly small for my stature. So give me. I need the small tools too.
I'm definitely ill-equipped to comment on that because.
Yeah. I think that's an area of improvement that needs to be done.
God, that's a whole topic.
That's a
I'll
whole
probably go on for a while.
Joking aside, I mean that can be an issue for men too. I mean, I've got quite long hands, and I've got quite strong hands, but I struggle with some tools as well because they're maybe designed for maybe a different shape of hand.
This very much falls under the category of.
But yeah, I mean, it's getting tools. I mean, just don't want to be virtue signaling here, but my youngest's 8th birthday, my daughter. I've got daughters. We bought her a toolbox. That was her main birthday present when she was 8, and it's proper tools. It's not kind of toy tools. It's screwdrivers and pliers, and it was so tricky to find not toy tools that an 8-year-old could use. Actually, if anyone's in that situation, they're looking for tools for an 8-year-old. Wilko in Wilkinson's in the UK have some smaller size tools that are actually really quite nice.
I really actually I am enjoying the fact that like we're getting comments as well about like other people being like, yeah, stuff doesn't necessarily come in my size, and like I'm a guy. Like this very much falls into the category of patriarchy hurts men too. I think like weird assumptions like that is so stupid. Like humans come in a range of sizes and variations, and that's normal. So like stop drawing lines and stuff. Stop designating this as normal man and this is not normal man. That's dumb. It's dumb. I am also, I think, turning into a pumpkin. I mean, obviously, I'm already a pumpkin.
Well, we are approaching Halloween.
Yes, and I am now judging a pumpkin-based competition. So
you are.
Yes, I am. So that is that's also a thing. But I am thinking that it is late.
It's just gone midnight here in the UK. So I think this is a conversation that we will probably at some point in 2022 have again. Maybe address slightly different parts. I mean, I know we haven't touched everything on our sort of crib sheet that we sort of developed beforehand. And I think we need to come back to this, and hopefully you three
I think it sounds like a good idea.
With some others come back and help us. We've had some really positive comments in the chat this evening. People who've found this.
It has genuinely been all
challenging
positive in the chat.
Yeah, challenging but interesting and useful.
It's been a lot of gratitude.
Yeah,
which is nice.
It's. I hope people who are listening, perhaps all year or listening later, kind of feel the same as well. I hope they do, and I'm sure if people need to reach out to somebody to sort of say, look, I want to know more, or I want to find out more, or I want to do the right thing. Yeah, I hope people can reach out to sort of any of us and sort of say, tell me more and help me more. Can I help and things like that.
Can I suggest some reading if anyone wants to do some reading?
Ooh,
there is a book by Angela Saini, is that how you say her last name? But it's called Inferior. And it's about scientific research and about where some of our thoughts on gender come from, and picking apart some of the science and the studies behind that about why we have certain assumptions about gender. It's a really, really interesting book.
That sounds perfect.
So it's called Inferior.
Great.
Yeah, we'll find that, or you can send me the link perhaps, and I'll make sure that's in the show notes so people can find it.
Perfect.
Sure, if it's okay with you, as this 2.5 hours in, we'll skip kind of what's been grabbing our attention. If anyone's got anything particularly that's just relevant, perhaps. I mean, the book obviously is one, and yeah, I'd just love to thank you guys so much, girls.
You all?
Friends.
Y'all?
Sorry, wrong. I said you all, yeah. Folks. It's late. I'm tired. My brain has been trying to process so much. Yeah, I can call you kiddos. I'm old enough. Yeah. Thank you, kiddos.
Jeez.
Brethren, comrades.
I can't thank you enough for coming on this evening and just being so open with us, and hitting some hard truths. So thank you
for making this space for this to be possible.
Yes,
definitely.
On that note, let's say bye and we'll end the broadcast, and we'll.
Good night, everyone.
Why not?
Have a good one.
Good night, everyone.
Bye, folks. See you next week.